One of our other top stories, we'll get more on Joe Biden's press conference at the end of the NATO summit. Dr. Emma Shortis is a US expert at the Australia Institute and she joins me now from Warrnambool in Victoria. Dr. Shortis, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So that press conference from Joe Biden earlier this morning, our time, it was quite highly anticipated. How far do you think it went in helping the president recover from that disastrous debate performance a few weeks ago?
Look, I think the first thing I'd say is that recovery for Joe Biden at this stage is almost impossible because he effectively needs to prove that he's not too old, and he is too old. And so the bar was always going to be, I think, too high for him in this press conference. Unfortunately, what has happened, despite the fact that he spoke very coherently, particularly about foreign policy later in the press conference, early on he made some pretty embarrassing slips, calling his vice president, Kamala Harris, Trump, for example, which was always going to lead the headlines. So, I don't think he has done the job that he needed to in reassuring particularly his colleagues in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, as you mentioned, that sort of Kamala Harris, Trump gaffe. There was also that earlier Vladimir Zelensky and Putin mix-up. He seemed to sort of brush that off when he was questioned about it, but there were those few stumbles once he came off the teleprompter there, wasn't there?
There were, and look, he did brush it off. He kind of laughed and tried to lean into his humor, which I think is a more effective strategy than, saying he has a cold. But if we kind of look deeper into that, in that television interview that he did a few days ago, which was designed to help him recover from the debate, he pitched himself as the one guy who can hold NATO together. And, if you put that statement alongside that slip, calling Vladimir Zelensky Putin, I think it raises, again, those questions about his capability, whether they're fair or not. This is now how it's being framed. And again, I'm really not sure how he can combat that.
We have seen now a number of people urging the president to step aside. What is the possible succession here? If it, say, gets to November and Joe Biden does decide to drop out of the race, who would then replace him?
Well, I think this is the strategic nightmare that Democrats find themselves in because effectively Joe Biden has already made the decision about who should succeed him in the leadership. When he picked Kamala Harris as his vice president 5 years ago now, and the fact that he hasn't anointed her as his successor suggests that for whatever reason he and perhaps the party more broadly don't think that she is the right person to take on this role, to take on the candidacy. And of course that leaves open the question of who it should be. And I think Democrats, the Democratic Party in particular, is very risk averse and doesn't want to have a contest over the leadership. But it's entirely possible, as we watch, that risk calculation is now changing, given Biden's situation and his inability to recover. The question of who will succeed him, I think, is what is animating the Democratic Party. And the reality is that Harris is the best placed to do that. It's whether the party will want to take that road, I suppose.
It's only been a couple of hours now since that press conference. Have you seen much of the reaction from other Democrats in the United States, and what's sort of the response been from within the party since that appearance?
Look, I think the response has been much the same as the one we've seen over the last few days. The press conference wasn't enough to reassure those Democrats who've already come out publicly, particularly, for example, Senator Peter Welch of Vermont, even some very carefully calibrated comments by Nancy Pelosi, who, of course, has a position of enormous power in the party. I don't think we'll see those comments and opinions being walked back. The Speaker of the House, Hakeem Jeffries, I think is still leaving the door open for a new candidate. And it does seem from the outside, at least, that momentum will continue to build as more senior Democrats and senators in particular make their worries more and more public.
Dr. Emma Shortis there from the Australia Institute. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to keep up to date with all our latest research and work, sign up to our newsletter. Delivered every fortnight, it includes behind the scenes updates from Richard Dennis, an exclusive cartoon from Judy Horacek, details for our upcoming events and webinars, as well as explainers, graphs, and not to mention the latest cutting-edge research and analysis from the team here on the key issues that are facing Australia. Click the button on your screen to check it out.